Welcome in on Labor Day Monday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Well, thousands of hotel workers hitting the picket lines. What they want from big brand hotels and how the hotel experience could be different for thousands of you traveling on this holiday. Plus, candidates for president taking cues from working men and working women. Labor Day talks on Labor Day from those who want the keys to the White House. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Okay, but right out the top, video out of Jerusalem coming to our monitors where thousands gathered for a procession for American-Israeli Hirsch Goldberg Poland. The 23-year-old's body found in an underground tunnel in Gaza. Hamas held him hostage since his capture on October 7th. His mother just spoke at his funeral.
I have had a lot of time during the past 332 days to think about my sweet boy, Hirsch. And one thing I keep thinking about is how out of all of the mothers in the whole entire world, God chose to give Hirsch to me. What must I have done in a past life to deserve such a beautiful gift? It must have been glorious. For 23 years, I was privileged to have the most stunning honor to be Hirsch's mama. I'll take it and say thank you. I just wish it had been for longer.
Hirsch's body, along with the bodies of 5 other hostages, recovered from underneath the city of Rafah. Israeli officials believe Hamas killed them shortly before military forces were able to get in and rescue them. The killing sparking outrage and protests all across Israel. In fact, at one point, it caused several flights to stay grounded or delayed for hours. This, of course, followed clashes between demonstrators and police in Tel Aviv overnight. Thousands taking to the streets, blaming the killings on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. CBS News contributor Robert Berger joins us live now in Jerusalem. Robert, do the protesters feel Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing enough to get the hostages freed, or is it exactly the opposite?
Exactly the opposite. The feeling among the protesters is that Netanyahu has basically scuttled a deal time and again by making new demands. So they were out on the streets, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people last night following the death of these hostages, demanding that Netanyahu make a deal now to bring the hostages home. Now, that could be easier said than done. You know, it takes 2 to tango, so to speak. Hamas also has demands that Israel hasn't accepted so far. But the view, if you talk to protesters on the streets, is that Netanyahu is to blame for the death of those hostages, and they don't want any more hostages to die. They want a deal now.
So, Robert, before we let you go, we want to get your take on what President Biden said about the situation, and specifically that question about Netanyahu. This is what he had to say outside the White House just a moment ago. Stay with us, and then I want to get your reaction. Let's listen.
Are you planning to present a final hostage deal to the both sides this week?
We're very close to that.
What makes you think that this deal will be successful in a way that the other deals were not?
Hope springs eternal.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Mr. President, what is your reaction to the demonstrations across Israel? What is your reaction to the demonstrations?
I'm going to get the detail when I walk in, and I'll talk to you after that, okay?
Thank you. Last event stand for a deal, Mr. President.
Do you have a message for the hostages' family, sir?
Yes, I've spoken to the American hostage. I spoke to his mom and dad, and we're not giving up. We're going to continue to push as hard as we can. Thank you.
So our question here, you heard President Biden say Netanyahu's not doing enough. That simple answer of no. Could this final proposal put the pressure on Netanyahu that's needed to finally get a ceasefire deal and get this done and get the rest of the hostages out alive?
You know, that no is really, really powerful, and it shows the pressure that the United States is putting on Netanyahu to make a deal. They feel, I would interpret from that Israel needs to make more concessions. But having said that, Netanyahu, for the past 6 months or so, has resisted American pressure and pressure from the street and pressure from the families of the hostages. One problem, or his dilemma, basically, is that he wants to stay in power, and the far-right members of his cabinet are threatening to topple the government if he makes a deal to stop the war. So I think Netanyahu may continue to resist that pressure.
Robert, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate those thoughts.
Thank you.
Of course, all of this is playing out while Britain says they are suspending giving weapons to Israel. Their concern, as stated today, weapons they give could be used to break international law. The Associated Press reporting this is not an arms embargo, but is related to about 30 of 350 exports to Israel. So after meeting with hostage negotiators focused on Israel and the Hamas war, candidate Kamala Harris is back out on the campaign trail, this time in the United States, at least domestically, focusing on workers this Labor Day. She's starting in Detroit. CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro live in Pennsylvania right now on the stream. Aaron, unions are key to winning the White House for either candidate. Labor states definitely prime political real estate. What do we expect today where you are?
Reed, good to be with you from a sunny and a little bit windy day here in Pittsburgh. I'm here near Hot Metal Bridge on this side of town, but the news will be made by Vice President Harris when it comes to steel. She will be opposing a merger between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel, the Japanese company. That's been in the works since last December. President Biden has opposed that, and Vice President Harris, while speaking to union members here with President Biden in Pittsburgh, will announce that she also opposes that merger and says that she wants U.S. Steel to remain in the U.S.
So, Aaron, after Detroit, Harris meets President Biden there where you are. It looks like the Harris campaign really wants to keep Joe Biden where his roots are.
That's right. I mean, he was born in Scranton and has so many roots here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He has said his presence on the campaign trail will be in this critical swing state. And Democrats believe he still can play here. He doesn't necessarily have the baggage that might accompany him when he goes to other states. So expect to see President Biden out in Pennsylvania, pretty much his second home state, as this home stretch post-Labor Day continues.
Aaron Navarro, CBS News political reporter, thank you so much for being on the stream with us today. So our video feed's also showing Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, leaving St. Paul for Milwaukee, where he's going to also try to win over workers at a gathering called Labor Fest. Meanwhile, the Trump-Vance campaign says its battleground operation is up and running and rolling, but so far today, they're not telling us of any Labor Day events. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman joins us now. Katrina, what can we expect as we look to Team Trump, at least in the coming days, maybe not today?
Reed, as far as we know today, Trump is golfing in Bedminster, but we're expecting to see him at a series of events starting on Wednesday. He has a town hall in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania that day. Then on Thursday, he's actually supposed to speak at the New York Economic Club about his economic platform. On Friday, he heads to Charlotte, North Carolina to talk to the National Police Group, and then he's having a rally in Wisconsin on Saturday. Vance, in the meantime, is going to be stopping in Arizona and then is expected to spend the week fundraising over on the West Coast.
All right, so Katrina, not only are you a journalist, you are an attorney. I want you to put your attorney's hat on because we want to ask, as we get closer to Election Day, we're mindful that Donald Trump still faces many legal troubles, especially that hush money case. What are we hearing about his attorneys requesting that the feds take over that case and give it another review? We know his sentencing's coming up as that request came in late last week.
Exactly. So they made a last-minute effort to try to move this case to federal court. This is something that they also did before the trial ever started, and the federal judge rejected it. He said that this was personal conduct, and they were not able to move forward with it at that time. So last week, they tried again to move to federal court, and on Friday, the judge rejected it, this time on a technicality. He said that the way the filing was submitted was deficient, that the judge and prosecution hadn't given their proper permission. But also on the docket for Trump this week is there's going to be a status conference for the federal election interference case in D.C., where the parties are going to come together with Judge Tanya Chutkan and discuss how that case could move forward now.
All right, Katrina Kaufman laboring on Labor Day. Nice monitors where you are as well. Thank you so much for streaming with us today. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about people who are not laboring on a Labor Day, at least not in their jobs. They're out on the picket line, and why it might affect your Labor Day travel. We'll be back in just a minute. When we see it, you see it. That's our promise here on CBS News 24/7. We want to take you live right now to images coming off of our monitors in Tel Aviv. Of course, this is the response after, of course, those hostages were found in a tunnel inside Gaza. Hostages killed. Not one bit of good news from that story. Hirsch Goldberg Poland, amidst those hostages, his funeral happened just a little while ago. His mother spoke at that funeral, and this is the national outcry. We had a CBS News contributor speaking to us at the top of this broadcast saying the lion's share of the people taking to the streets right now demanding that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu get a ceasefire deal done and get a hostage release deal done. The killing of these hostages discovered there in Rafah in underground tunnels just has torn the heart of so many people there in this area that we're looking at, Tel Aviv, and people are in the streets and they are demanding a deal get done and get done soon. Our international partners watching this story as it continues to develop because it will command our dinner time headlines and probably throughout the rest of the week. Taking a live look now here in the United States, this is inside a campaign rally in the Motor City where union support is crucial for anybody who wants to take the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris talking labor to voters there today. We do expect to hear from her shortly. And when we do, you will see it right here on CBS News 24/7. Meanwhile, a Brazilian Supreme Court has upheld a judge's decision to block social media platform X all throughout that country. The move comes after ex-CEO Elon Musk said no way to naming a local representative in that country. X will now be blocked until it complies with that order and pay fines that exceed $3 million. Russian now, where Russian officials say a Ukrainian attack on a child care center this morning in the Russian city of Belgrade means kindergartens in that area are all shuttered. Classes are going to be held online, we understand. So far, no word on whether anybody was injured or killed there. Coming back to the United States, thousands of hotel workers across the country off the job and on the picket line. This is happening on one of the busiest travel days of the year. They are demanding higher wages, better working conditions, and other things after contract negotiations failed with those major hotel chains. We reached out to spokespeople for two of the major hotel chains, Hilton and Hyatt, who tell us they look forward to continuing negotiations with union members. We ride our video monitors now and jump the map to New York. The state fair there reopening for its final day today in Syracuse after false reports of a shooting and the decision to shut it all down while police investigated. Police say a call came in reporting shots fired close to crowds, and you see the crowds were big there. Turns out the calls were false, but out of an abundance of caution, organizers shut down that fair early last night just to keep it safe. Jumping the map now to the Bay Area city of San Francisco in California, where 49ers wide receiver Ricky Pearsall caught a bullet during an attempted robbery in San Francisco's iconic Union Square. You see the video there. That's him put on a stretcher and then loaded into the back of an ambulance. A through and through bullet wound through the chest and out his back. He's out of the hospital now. What his mother is calling a close call and a miracle that he's alive. In fact, she says that bullet entered right through the side of his chest, missed vital organs. The trigger person, police say, was a 17-year-old. The San Francisco district attorney vowing to file criminal charges Wednesday. All right, our live feeds now giving us a look from Miami on this Labor Day. If you are in the Magic City, maybe getting some cafecito and guava pastelito, the rain might just affect your travel plans, Jess.
You can already see those clouds too over the city. Miami, we know what it's like down there during this time of year. We get those afternoon thunderstorms, and that's definitely the case throughout the afternoon hours today, where it is hot down there and it is humid. Afternoon showers are expected throughout southern Florida as well as all of Texas as we head into the next 24 hours. The reason why this is important is this is going to cause a lot of travel delays for all of our friends in those areas getting back from our Labor Day weekend. We're going to continue to watch those storms really develop and start to die down into the overnight hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow, just for Florida. But Texas, we're expecting about 3 to 6 inches of rain from those storms there. Futurecast also showing some severe weather, some gusty conditions and really active rain anywhere up in the Pacific Northwest from Idaho all the way back into Oregon and Washington too. Right now, our severe weather outlook is showing a marginal risk just in that region, as well as some gusty conditions. Today, wind speeds anywhere up to around 50 to 60 miles per hour are expected in that area. So that could cause some travel delays all throughout that region. We're expecting 80s near Atlanta, 70s into Chicago with sunny skies, but it is still humid. It is still wet down in the south. Houston expecting those thunderstorms throughout the evening hours tonight. Let's head to our map real fast and take a look at the rest of our areas. Starting off in the south, all throughout the southwest, actually, we're dealing with triple-digit weather. It's about to heat up even more as we head into the coming days. I'll have more on that forecast coming up in just a bit. Triple-digit weather today near Phoenix and Las Vegas, and we have 90s off into the south too, the south all the way into Florida, stretching over into areas like Houston. But with that relative humidity, you add about 5 to 10 degrees to those temperatures, and it is hot widespread throughout the states, Reed.
All right, Jess, question for you. Ketchup or mustard on your hot dog?
Good question, ketchup.
All right, so it's a good day to ask that question because two competitive eating legends getting ready for another hot dog head-to-head. We're talking, of course, about Joy Chestnut to Carol Kobayashi, who will muster the strength to see who can down the most dogs. This is happening in Las Vegas. Here's Chestnut talking about the pair's rivalry.
It's a real rivalry. We push each other. We don't really like each other. But I think we do respect each other. I know I respect him, and I respect the rivalry. I know that we're going to push each other really, really hard. And we hate losing to each other, and that drives us a little bit harder.
Treating eating hot dogs like a sport nowadays. Okay, so there is a new rule to tell you about. The pair cannot dip hot dogs in water for this matchup. You might remember in the Nathan's contest, you see them often dunking their dogs in the water. Ugh, right? You can watch that streaming today, by the way. Hey, when we come back, we've got our Eye on America talking about those who want to serve in the military, but because of rules, cannot. We'll dig deeper when we come back. All right, when we see it, you see it. Let's go ahead and take our live video feeds right now to Detroit, where Vice President Kamala Harris and candidate Harris just took to the mic to talk to motor workers there and especially trying to get that union vote. Let's listen in.
The dignity of work. We celebrate unions because unions helped build America, and unions helped build America's middle class. It is true across our nation, and it is true here in Detroit. Nearly 140 years ago, in this very city, 10,000 people marched in one of our nation's first Labor Day parades. Many held signs that read, "Divided, we can beg. United, we can demand." For generations in Detroit and across our nation, the brothers and sisters of labor have stood together to righteously demand fair pay, better benefits, and safe working conditions. And let me say, every person in our nation has benefited from that work. Everywhere I go, I tell people, look, you may not be a union member. You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. Because what we know is when union wages go up, everybody's wages go up. When union workplaces are safer, every workplace is safer. When unions are strong, America is strong. We know what we're talking about. The labor movement has always understood the power of the collective and the power of unity. The power of unity. And while we are fighting so much nonsense that is about trying to divide our country, trying to pull us apart, look to what The history and the present of labor tells us about the power of the collective and unity. The spirit of that work, as much as the product of that work, is very telling and gives us really good lessons about what creates strength. And you know, many of you know my parents met while they were active in the civil rights movement. So when I was young, my parents, I see some young leaders here today. When I was young, my parents would take me to the meetings. I see our young leaders. And take me to the marches. I was in a stroller. And from a very young age, I learned that when people stand together, when we join voices, knowing that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, when we join those voices, we can drive extraordinary change, which is why I believe in my heart and soul, no one should ever be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. We are all in this together. But I'll tell you, I think that there has been a certain backward-thinking approach over the last several years, which is to suggest, them folks, to suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of what we know, the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. Who you lift up. That's the measure of the strength.
Vice President Kamala Harris talking about the power of voices uniting, and she and her campaign definitely hope that unions across the United States will unite for her to get her over that threshold to take the White House. We're watching that one closely, and you'll be able to see the fullness of what she says coming up more on CBS News 24/7. When we come back, we're just getting word out of Israel that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is addressing his people as thousands take to the street in Tel Aviv following the finding of bodies of hostages in an underground tunnel in Gaza. CBS News 24/7, back after the break. Just a moment ago, we brought you live pictures out of Tel Aviv, thousands taking to the streets there, protesting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, many of them saying he's not getting the job done fast enough to get a hostage deal and get hostages released. Well, now we're seeing this, Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to his citizens there. Let's go live right now to BBC coverage of that announcement.
Our presence there is a strategic issue. We have to fixate that fact that we are there. Okay, people said to me, okay, we'll leave. You can leave for 42 days and then come back. And I said, yes, I've heard that. We've been there before we left Lebanon. And they said, oh, the moment there's the missile or a rocket, we'll go back in. And we'll have international support for that. Amazing it. But they actually barraged us with thousands of rockets and missiles. They said when we left the Gaza Strip, they said, what's the problem? The first missile will go back in. Well, the first one that is actually even under the ground, through the tunnels or over the ground, but 20 years have passed and we have not gone in. So everyone who says it's not a problem to go in, well, there is a problem, very much so. It's not easy to do it whatsoever. And it's not a tactical military question. It is a question of very, very heavy international pressure on us that is being wielded on us, that if we leave, we cannot go back, that we won't be able to go back. And I'll tell you how hard it was to overcome that international pressure. And I actually managed to withstand it. To go into Rafah, when I said, can you imagine what it was? The ICC, they brought it just a day or two before that because they knew that we were going to go in. So there was a whole ammunition embargo, which is now sort of spreading as well. We paid with the price of our soldiers' lives. But that is nothing that will, in comparison to what will happen if we leave. They want us to conclude the war. Everyone wants us to finish, to conclude that war. But that corridor, that axis is completely different from all the others. It is central and it determines the future, our entire future. It's very important for us, but for the world who wants the end of the war, the last thing they want is for us to go into the Philadelphia corridor. From the Security Council and all over, there's going to be really tremendous pressure wielded on us. Why should we go in? They keep saying, into that trap. They say it's possible. Well, I can tell you that it will not bring us the hostages back. On the contrary, I'd just like to tell you that when we did go into Philadelphia, only then did we feel that change. For long months after the first deal, Hamas did not move. And they stubbornly said, you've got to declare in advance the end of the war and leave the Gaza Strip and enable us to go back and control Gaza. The first crack, and of course that doesn't bring about a deal whatsoever, but the first crack was when we went into Rafah and we took over the Philadelphia corridor and the Rafah transit point, because that was literally their way they actually could breathe and their oxygen. They were hoping that Iran or Hezbollah would come and save them. Now that they're hoping that international pressure would now extricate them from that situation. But the only effective change that would be enabled would be if we hold on to the Philadelphia corridor and not vacate it, not evacuate it. Because once we leave it, we'll never be able to go back. So we're not going to leave for 42 days, because I did not say, someone misquoted me, I didn't say we're not leaving for 42 days because we'll be there for 42 years. I did not say that. But we didn't, when we did leave it, we didn't go back for 20 years. But after we fought, and we actually were holding them in a stronghold, that is the only thing that can give us the hostages and can prevent the smuggling of the hostages out over land. They can actually smuggle them out in those 42 days. They can smuggle them out to Sinai. It's so easy. They can just go over the border and they'll disappear. They could suddenly find themselves in Yemen or in Iran. So after we received all that, we're not going to give it up. This is a horrific trap. It's a strategic, really existential issue. And there are those said, oh, it's easy, we can leave the Gaza, there's no problem, we can leave Lebanon. They all said that, but after the 7th of October, we've learned to be a little more cautious in our assessments and understand every single component. To my chagrin, despite the fact that with all my heart and soul to promote a deal, we did not see a similar response on their
Listening
side.
to our partners at the BBC streaming live comments by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after news of hostages killed in Gaza. Of course, today is the day for the funeral of one of those hostages, and that funeral brought out thousands of people in protest today, demanding that a deal get done. Let's really think about the situation that Netanyahu has right now. What you're seeing here are his domestic pressures. He has pressures on the domestic front from his own people saying, get a deal done, get a ceasefire deal done, get the hostages released. They've just had a gutful of this, and they don't want to see what they saw in recent days, those hostages found dead in a tunnel in Rafah. Those are the domestic pressures that bring Benjamin Netanyahu frustrated to the mic right now and speaking to his people. But also he has some international pressures, and you heard him talk about that. International pressures, and the lead there is the fact that British allies are saying they are going to pull back on some munitions, not an all-out arms embargo, but pulling back some munitions to go to Israel in their fight against Hamas. The British allies saying they are concerned that some of those munitions could be used in ways that they do not intend for them to be used, and maybe even cross the threshold into criminal use. That's using their terminology. So we are now seeing those domestic pressures and the international pressures fueling what Benjamin Netanyahu obviously has, which is a great deal of frustration now, talking about why he cannot pull back and his reasons for it there. We'll continue following that story overseas for many days to come. Let's come back to the United States. From Connecticut to California, some unrest there. These are hotel workers. They're walking picket lines. And really think about it. This is on one of the busiest travel weekends of the year. CBS News Bay Area's Suji Nam joins us live now from San Francisco, where workers are about to march through downtown in that area. In fact, we can see them marching right now. We can hear them. What are they demanding?
Reed, that's right. I'm here outside the Westin St. Francis here in San Francisco, and the crowd has doubled in the last couple of hours. You can see dozens and dozens of workers, hotel workers from several different hotels in the area that are striking. They're fighting for better wages, better working conditions. They're holding signs saying things like one job should be enough and make them pay.
All right, Suji, thank you for that picture into what's happening there in the Bay Area. And we know that thousands of protesters are also joining picket lines across the country. So let's go to a live look from Newark's airport in New Jersey. It's another busy travel day for so many people as people rush to get home from their Labor Day weekend. In fact, we understand the TSA says that they're going to have record-breaking summer travel and screenings just over the last few days in the millions. Of course, we can also tell you that the situation down on the road is also very packed. You know, AAA has been telling us for quite a while that many more people than we usually see are going to be out on the roadways because gas prices are down nationwide. So those people who are flying, get ready to be nice to the TSA. They've seen 17 million of you coming through security checkpoints. And if you're on the roadways, just take it slow because you will likely see many more people out on the road cashing in on the fact that gas is just a little bit cheaper than we've been used to seeing. Hey, let's take our video monitors now to Jackson, Wyoming, where hot weather and dry conditions make for a tinderbox. This wildfire west of Jackson, sparked by lightning, has burned 13,000 acres and counting. Some beautiful territory there, Jess. So many people love to go to Jackson, Wyoming, and it's a tragedy to see that land chewed up by fire.
And it is still fire weather season in that region. We continue to keep a close eye all throughout the north and stretching down into the south real fast, where daytime highs are really reflecting dry conditions. I mean, we're talking about triple-digit weather anywhere from Las Vegas down into Phoenix, but it is warm for all of us as we wrap up this Labor Day weekend, stretching all the way up into Denver in the 90s. We're also expecting 90s today off near Billings, Montana. Now, we head all the way over into areas where it's a little bit more humid compared to some of the spots I just mentioned. For example, the south, daytime highs today stretching anywhere from Jacksonville right back up into Memphis and Atlanta in the upper 90s or upper 80s and lower 90s. The reason why I bring that up is because you add about 5 to 10 degrees because that's a humid area right now with a lot of thunderstorm activity near Texas, stretching over into Florida throughout this afternoon. Taking a look behind me, this could impact some travel, especially in areas close to Houston as we head into the coming days, where we do have thunderstorm activity lasting into the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. Here we go. Chicago at least dealing with sunny skies and 70s in the forecast today, 80s all the way down to St. Louis. Here's what's happening as we head all the way into the next couple days. Our heat risk map really focused on the south right now. Southern Alabama, northern Florida, especially the Panhandle right now, dealing with some extreme heat. Areas like Destin all the way over into PCB, that's an area where we're going to keep a close eye on throughout the next couple days, as well as the north stretching down all the way into Southern California. Now, shifting gears a little bit further ahead, the next 6 to 10 days, the Climate Prediction Center is showing some relief in sight for areas like Texas dealing with those thunderstorms this afternoon, but it is still hot for us off into the west coast, where areas like the Bay Area could expect daytime highs in the triple digits right around the corner, Reed.
All right, let's take it back to that live look from Newark's Newport Airport in New Jersey. It's another busy travel day, and CBS News 24/7 anchor and national correspondent Errol Burnett joins us live from New York's LaGuardia Airport. Errol, are you seeing big crowds, and are they frustrated, or is everybody just being nice?
Reed, here's the good news. Where you are and where I am now, we're actually lucky because San Francisco's airport is not experiencing many delays. It's smooth sailing here for now in New York at LaGuardia, this terminal serving American, JetBlue, and Southwest. In fact, American Airlines just shared with us some brand new numbers. They say that they've been able to move some 700,000 passengers today alone, and they have been able to recover from some weather disruptions on Sunday around Charlotte and around Miami. If we all think back to years past, sometimes a small weather disruption can create this domino effect that could lead to cancellation for days. That hasn't happened for American Airlines. However, we are seeing at this moment the worst weather in the country just west of Dallas-Fort Worth's airport there in Texas. That's a major American Airlines hub. If viewers are watching from there, you're going to want to get to your flight early, look at the flight radar, and stay in contact with your airline because that could lead to some disruptions later on in the day. But there are some resources for folks, Reed. Folks can download the TSA's app. Yes, they do actually have one. It's called My TSA. And within that app, you can add any airport you like. It will give you real-time information about cancellations or delays or how long it will take for you to get through the airport in the hours ahead. But it's been a very busy weekend all across the country. Hundreds of millions of people, in fact, have used this summer to travel and to get somewhere. And folks will make their way home via aircraft over the next couple days for Labor Day as they try and carve out just a bit more downtime. We've been bumping into people here at the airport heading to places like North Carolina, South Carolina. We bumped into a tennis player who had wrapped up his time at the U.S. Open, Mackenzie McDonald. He had his tennis rackets and he was heading back home to Orlando after going against Jannik Sinner, so he lost at least to a winner. But for the most part, folks here have been friendly. As you know, Reed, pack your patience and bring as much gratitude as you can to the plane. I always believe you do get that back from other people who are also just trying to get to where they need to be.
Arrow, listen, that was a vitamin-packed report, my friend. You got us a little bit of weather, a little bit of sports, and some travel tips as well.
There you
Arrow
go.
Burnett, it's always nice to share the screen with you, my
Trifecta.
friend. You have a great day.
Great to see you,
Okay,
Reed.
when we come back, we have our eye on America. Of course, the big question about how the rules really shape who joins the military. And some people say, hey, I want to join the military, but I can't because of the rules. We'll be digging into that one. Our live video feeds give us this look from Houston on this Labor Day. Some rain in that area and in other parts of the country might affect your travel plans when you come back home, Jess.
Well, within the next couple of days, Reed, Houston could see anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of rain accumulate in that community. And we're also expecting some afternoon thunderstorms really just isolated in southern Florida as we head into the next 24 hours, too. Here's what's happening. Advancing futurecast throughout the next 24 hours, we really watch these storms develop. Areas like Houston stretching all throughout the south. It looks like this is frozen, but they are expecting thunderstorm activity. There we go. Into the overnight hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. We keep a very close eye on those communities, especially with flash flooding possible throughout Texas in the next 24 hours. And we keep our eyes also on areas all the way up into the Pacific Northwest, too, where they're expected to see some really active severe weather right around the corner. I'm going to actually show you right below me what's happening as we head into this afternoon. Travel forecasting showing daytime highs today stretching anywhere from triple-digit weather all the way down into the south. Stretching over into the southwest, too, we're seeing a very similar trend. Here's what's happening as we head into this afternoon. Texas, where we can receive a lot of rain this afternoon, still holding on tight to 80s in areas like Dallas and San Antonio. Stretching over into Jacksonville, 90-degree forecasted numbers are expected today, but you add about 5 to 10 degrees to that due to relative humidity just in that region. We'll have more on this coming up in just a bit, but for now, over to you, Reed.
CBS News Eye on America series lets us hear your stories in your communities. You know, a study from the Pentagon says most young people in America wouldn't qualify for military service. Their numbers, 77%. The study says mental, physical, or substance abuse issues are the reason for that. CBS News correspondent Natalie Morales looks at those who want to serve but are not allowed to serve because of military policy.
28-year-old Hannah Vankera is everything the military desires. Motivated, physically fit, patriotic.
I believe in our country, and I want to serve it.
Except for this.
My leg, I've never counted it as part of my identity. I'm just Hannah who happens to be missing a leg.
A rare birth defect forced an amputation when she was just 10 months old.
Can you walk for the camera?
And she hasn't slowed down since.
We did swim team, volleyball, rock climbing. I'll surf with it, hike with it.
And you've never felt any limitations because of your amputation?
Never.
While her amputation hasn't stopped her at all, the military has. She was rejected by the Navy.
The subject applicant does not meet established physical standards.
Active duty troops who lose limbs can still serve, but for those seeking to enlist, current absence of a foot is automatically disqualifying.
Hannah Vankera's desire to get into the military comes at a time when recruitment numbers have reached their lowest levels since the Vietnam War.
Our recruitment is suffering, and there are plenty of people with the right heart to serve that can't.
3, 2, go.
Vankera is in training to once again try and enlist by seeking a medical waiver to join the Washington Air National Guard. She is also a full-time ER nurse, often on her feet for 12-hour shifts, and wants to continue doing her job while in uniform.
What better opportunity for someone who just lost a limb to see a nurse that says, hey, buck up, I'm an amputee too.
Her father, Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Vankera, is a retired Air Force flight surgeon.
You're her dad, but speaking as somebody who also knows what she needs to do her job, what do you think she adds?
She adds a joy. Her middle name is Joy. And she fits it. She perseveres.
Alex Gates is Vankera's prosthetist and says medical progress has been met by antiquated thinking.
The rule was written back when prosthetics were made out of wood and leather.
Does she have any limitations as far as you're aware of?
I think she's more able-bodied than most people that we come in contact with every day.
For the military, they would say the concern is if you're a liability, and also would you be able to deploy easily?
Yes.
Right?
That is their overarching concern. I'm not asking that we ignore disability and pretend it doesn't exist. Rather that we do not ignore ability.
Her goal, break through closed doors by opening minds. For Eye on America, I'm Natalie Morales in Spokane.
Stories from your communities. Hey, before we leave you, we want to get to this. This just in, the U.S. Justice Department seized an aircraft belonging to the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. Attorney General Merrick Garland says the team actually took that plane into custody. It was the Maduro plane, and apparently he and his team bought it illegally for $13 million, apparently through a shell company, and then smuggled it out of the United States. And by the way, that's a violation of U.S. sanctions. Maduro's plane, which is described as Venezuela's Air Force One, was seized by the feds in the Dominican Republic. This is video of that right there. It was then transferred to South Florida. That's where it sits on the tarmac. There are no reports, by the way, that Maduro was on that plane. Meanwhile, the Brazilian Supreme Court has upheld a judge's decision to block social media platform X nationwide. The move comes after X CEO Elon Musk said no way to naming a local legal representative in Brazil. So in that country, X is blocked until it complies with the order and pays fines. We understand those fines exceed $3 million. That's it for us at this hour. CBS News 24/7. Thank you so much for watching on a Labor Day. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place.